Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is in Eau Claire. We're on the campus of Chippewa Valley Tech College. We're interviewing Kelly Westlund of Ashland. She's a Democrat. She's the Democratic candidate in the 7th Congressional District. Kelly, welcome back to Wisconsin Eye.
Thanks for having me.
Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Kelly, first run certainly for Congress, so let's do two things. Let's give us the short version of your bio, and then what do you consider your biggest campaign issue, please?
Well, I grew up in a military family, so I've spent much of my life living in different parts of this country and getting to know people from all walks of life. I came to northern Wisconsin about 13 years ago to attend Northland College, where I earned a degree in conflict resolution. So these are some of those coalition building skills, problem solving skills that I very much intend to take with me to Congress. After leaving Northland, I went on to serve as the executive director of the Alliance for Sustainability, which was a nonprofit organization focused on helping rural communities become more self-reliant, renewable energy, local food, economic development, that sort of thing. And when I left, I was elected to the Ashland City Council in 2011, and then have started my own business, a consulting business with family farmers. And I've had the great pleasure of working with family farmers for the last couple of years, building a strong local food system. So they are seeing their adult children coming home to be a part of the family business for the first time in a long time, and I'm really proud of that work. The biggest issue on the campaign trail, so far, it's all about those kitchen table issues. People are concerned about the fact that most of us work hard and still struggle to make ends meet, let alone save for retirement or pay for an education. And that kind of has a lot of connections to the fact that big money interests have so much power over our government. All things that need to change.
Conflict resolution might come in handy as you go to Congress. Yeah. Congress has an approval rating of between 8% and 15%. Congressman Mark Pocan says it's overrated. But how would you work to convince voters in the 7th District that Congress is going to be functional again?
Well, our country is facing serious problems, and we have the least productive Congress in the history of our country, which is, I think, a big part of the reason why. When I talk to voters, inevitably the most common response that I get when I ask the question, what would you like to see Congress working on? People say, I'd like to see Congress working at all. I have a track record of building broad coalitions of people with different interests to have them work together on things that serve the greater good. And frankly, a good idea can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to come from one side of the aisle or the other, and it's worth talking to folks as people on the same side of the table, addressing the challenge across from us, so that we can find solutions that we can all agree on and work our way out from there.
Okay. On your website, you say that Congressman Duffy, who's your opponent on November 4th, says one thing in the 7th District and another thing in Washington. Can you give me an example of that?
If you've ever gotten a letter from Congressman Duffy, it talks about how interested he is in listening to our concerns and working for working people and that sort of thing. But he's been supportive of the Paul Ryan budget, which cuts things like Pell Grants, which cuts the social safety net that many people in our district depend on. The last time that I was at his office with a group of folks asking for his support in raising the minimum wage, they wouldn't let us into the office, they wouldn't let us schedule an appointment, and then the police were called because we were loitering in the parking lot. That's not a congressman who's actively trying to listen to his constituents.
Republicans like him say, yes, they're willing to make those tough decisions, that's their term, because we face a $17 trillion budget deficit. Your response?
That deficit is largely the result of two unfunded wars, that were off the books for many years. And the other problem is that we continue to give big tax breaks to the people at the very top of the economic ladder. The fact is that the top income earners are the only people that have done better since the economic recovery has started. Middle class families are staying at the same rate, and low income folks aren't doing any better either. The fact is that we have to change the people sitting at the table making decisions in Washington if we want the best interests of working class and middle class people represented.
I think you just said that the issue of income inequality is a huge thing for America. How would you fight it as a member of the House?
It's a number of things. I think first it starts with corporate tax reform and then tax reform in general, taxation on capital gains. Warren Buffett has been very vocal about the fact that he pays a lower interest or a lower tax rate than his secretary does. That's wrong. But there are a number of other specific policy proposals, things like raising the minimum wage. Fact is that when workers have more discretionary income, when they have more money in their pockets, then they're able to spend it. And it's not until we have that economic opportunity in the middle class and the working class that our economy can move forward. Right now, we're strapped. Working class and middle class people are strapped. That means that we're not spending money, we're not creating jobs.
Some American domiciled corporations are considering relocating to foreign countries. There's a bill that would prevent this so-called inversion. Is that something that you would vote for?
Yeah, I think that's important. These are companies that have been built up on American soil that rely on their American customer base, and for them to be able to just go overseas and say it's because the tax rates are too high here. With tax reform, we could even lower those tax rates if we were to close the loopholes. We have massively profitable corporations right now that pay nothing, and many of which get refunds from the federal government. That's taxpayers subsidizing their profits.
Impact of the Affordable Care Act on Wisconsin or the 7th District. What changes have you seen?
Well, the primary concern of folks that I've heard from in the district is about the fact that our governor has not accepted the Medicaid expansion, which means that we have a broad group of people who don't make enough to afford health insurance but don't qualify for the subsidies either. So we still have a lot of folks that just don't have access to affordable health care, and I think that's wrong. In this country, we have the means to fix that problem. We just don't have the political willpower to do it yet.
Ultimately, should we go to a single-payer system, Kelly?
I think so. I think that's the way that we're going to have to go. I heard a really interesting argument about it just a few days ago. It was actually from an older article. And this gentleman was talking about how universal health care is actually an issue of national security. If there were an outbreak of anthrax or Ebola or something like that, if the person didn't have health insurance, what are the chances they'd go seek medical treatment right away? That's a serious concern. And the fact is, having your health is the foundation of being able to work and to save for your future and build a secure economic future for your family.
Congress just put a very short-term Band-Aid over the issue of long-term funding of our highways. What's a better solution than smoothing, which you take? Your term is gimmick, but it takes corporate profits that they aren't contributing to their pensions. But the question is, what's a long-term solution to transportation?
There are a number of things that we can do, and I think many of these just come back to making sure that those at the very top economic echelons are paying their fair share. The fact is, they benefit on the backs of working class and middle class people, but commerce is built on a solid infrastructure. If we can't afford to fund our highway system, that means people in communities like mine are being laid off because that work isn't getting done. Okay.
What provisions would you push for in a immigration change bill?
I think that we need to have a path to citizenship. For undocumented people that have been here, that are making a contribution to our community.
What should be the stepping stones on that path, Kelly?
That's a great question. Well, first we've got to find a way, incentives to bring people out of the shadows. There are many folks who are here who just aren't speaking up about it because they're afraid of what might happen to them and their families. We have to make sure that our borders are secure, of course, but the idea of sending people back when they've made this trek here and they want to make a contribution and build a future for their families, the fact is this is a country built on immigration. And that people think about a certain segment of population that comes, and really it's far more diverse and far more complex than I think a lot of people understand.
The 57,000 children who crossed the border from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, should they be deported? Should they be sent back? Should they be allowed to stay in the country? Your thoughts?
I think that we are creative and compassionate people, and we have to find a better solution. The fact is we cannot send those children back to what is literally the murder capital of the world. I don't think that we should be okay with that as a nation.
All 57,000, we should find room for them in America?
Well, my understanding is that if we are able to find something like 30 households, granted it's going to be it's going to be something that's going to weigh heavily on our foster care program or what have you, but there are ways we can find solutions to these problems.
What did you learn as a candidate for Congress from the Edward Snowden leaks? The NSA, did they break the law?
To me, I think that it is It is a violation of our constitutional rights that our government is spying on us in the way that they are. And we never would have known it if not for Edward Snowden being a whistleblower.
Was there one chilling thing that you learned about NSA practices from the Snowden disclosures?
I think that it's just mainly the extent to which they're spying on American citizens without any particular reason. The cell phone data collection, the no-fly list, that sort of thing, with folks that they don't have any real connections. We have rights in this country, and to see that our own government is violating those rights is incredibly troubling. There needs to be a lot more oversight and transparency.
How do you balance that with with President Obama's recent statement that ISIS poses a real threat, not yet to America, but it could, and we've just seen the tragic beheading of 2 American journalists. Is there a balancing act there, Kelly?
I'm sorry, are you still asking about the NSA question?
Yes. How do you balance NSA with terrorist threat? Excuse me for asking a poor question.
Well, I think that the work that our government is doing abroad in information gathering is different than what it's doing with its domestic population. Okay. The fact is, we're governed by the constitutional rights, and when there's something overseas or something anywhere really that is posing a potential danger to the American people, there's got to be a threshold. But we have a court system with warrants and things like that that would generally govern that in this country, and it's troubling that hasn't been employed.
What have you learned watching Americans' boots on the ground in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now there's the issue of Syria, and now are you comfortable with President Obama's response to the threat posed by ISIS?
I'm troubled by the fact that we have now been at war for over a decade, that we continue to keep falling into these traps. And the issue of mission creep in the instance of Syria, specifically with ISIS, the potential is really it's a great concern, because we're already learning lessons from what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. The fact that we've got all of these troops coming home, that we don't have adequate funding to care for them properly, issues with the VA and with whatever other benefits these folks need, the support that they need. And we have to make sure that we're going into this with good intelligence, with a clear plan, with an exit strategy, and with a broad coalition of support. I believe that Congress should vote on this issue. I don't think that we should go in guns blazing and hope for the best.
What should be the criteria with these exploding international conflicts for, I'll use the term boots on the ground, American boots on the ground, if you're a member of Congress?
I guess it depends on, there are so many complicating factors. It depends a lot on whether there's an opportunity for diplomatic solutions, whether there is the potential for attacks on American soil, whether there are so many varying factors. It really depends on the individual circumstance.
Okay.
I think we need thoughtful leadership either way.
Okay. You mentioned campaign finance on your website. You would support a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because I don't believe that corporations are people. I don't believe that money is speech. And as long as we allow those things to stay as the status quo, then most of us, the vast majority of people, are going to have their citizen voices drowned out by corporate campaign contributions. That is not a representative democracy. We've got to fix it.
Well, talk about the explosion of money. You're not going to be able to raise as much as your opponent on November 4, right?
I wouldn't imagine.
You wouldn't imagine.
He's an incumbent who serves on Financial Services Committee.
Okay. Does that mean then that he has a lot more access to campaign donations than someone like you?
Well, the thing is, we have a really broad base of support. We've got thousands of individual contributors, but the vast majority of them are giving in increments of under $50, $25 to $50. And that means that these are working class people who can't afford to write me a check for $2,600 or $5,000 at a time. And it's tilted the entire system to a point where the wealthiest among us have undue influence over our government, because it makes it easier for us to go straight to the wealthiest to get those campaign contributions. Sean Duffy is on Financial Services, as I said. His top campaign contributors come from Wall Street, come from Republican leadership PACs, and they come from industries like Koch Industries and groups like Americans for Prosperity. I don't believe that those groups have the best interests in mind when it comes to working class people and our ability to make ends meet and put food on the table.
The 7th Congressional District is huge.
Yeah.
And often voters, you're finding out, can't determine what's a federal issue and a state issue. So are you being asked your position on mining, the mine?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And what is it? We're talking here about Gogebi's proposed iron ore, open pit mine for Ashland and Iron County.
And that is something that's evolving even as recently as this week. I get asked about it all the time. The fact is, I've been involved in that issue from very early on in my role as a city councilor, and also just somebody who lives there and drinks the water and breathes the air. But the argument in favor of the mine was for job creation. But the fact is, our economic drivers in Ashland and Bayfield counties are dependent on things like, well, and to some extent Iron County as well, on things like forestry, fisheries, tourism, outdoor recreation, all things that end up getting put at risk as a result of that project going wrong. And what we know is that this company cannot be trusted, that the rules that they bought at the state level are insufficient to protect the environment and the communities that surround the area. And now that the tribe has gone to, the Bad River tribe has gone to the EPA and requested the authority to regulate water quality, then the project may be completely off the table once that decision comes down.
Are you saying that there's no way to safely open a mine in the 7th Congressional District that wouldn't threaten the environment? Excuse me.
I don't know about in the entire 7th Congressional District, but this particular place has such complex hydrology. As Gogebic Taconite recently said, that the wetlands were a bigger issue than they had originally anticipated. But it's there are certain places where it's just not appropriate, and this is one of those places.
Did you welcome the statement by Gogebic that they may only mine in Iron and not Ashland counties?
To me, that's them playing to the politics of the situation, to be honest. And the fact is that even if they mine the section in Iron County, that's still largely the watershed that affects Ashland County and the Lake Superior basin there.
You must also be asked about frac sand mining, even though somewhat it's a state issue, your position on that?
Well, I think from what I'm hearing from folks throughout the district, they have serious concerns, especially about air quality as a result of those things, but also the impacts on local communities. The fact is, these are huge extraction-based companies that come to a town, and yeah, they have some jobs for a number of years, but the fact is, that's a boom and bust economic driver, and they have to find other ways to make sure that these communities can survive once that operation is done, and they have this mess to clean up.
Position on the Keystone Pipeline.
The Keystone Pipeline, to me, is one more example of propping up the fossil fuel industry artificially. The fact is that, one, they say, again, it's about job creation, but it's going to create the temporary construction jobs and then only result in 35 permanent jobs. The point of a pipeline is automation. And it's going to contribute to climate change. It's an export pipeline. So it's not necessarily helping the energy independence of this country. Why not reinvest that money in things that can help us actually become energy independent for the future?
And your position on the Obama administration's proposed 30% reduction nationally by 2030 in carbon emissions?
I think that it's long overdue. We're already almost halfway there from what I understand, because it's set at the 2005 threshold. And the fact is, we've got to start doing something to spur more research and development in those other technologies that are going to be cleaner if we're going to have any hope of addressing the serious challenges ahead of us.
I was fascinated because the Wisconsin Taxpayer Alliance about 3 months ago predicted that the number of adults in Bayfield and Price County were going to be dropping 35 and 30% within the next, I think, 20 or 25 years. What's a way, as a member of Congress, to prevent that exodus of working-age residents in those two counties? And those were the counties that would lose the most, according to the Taxpayer Alliance.
It's got to do with economic development, which, in my mind, living in Ashland and having served on our Economic Development Committee and our Public Works Committee, I understand that one of our most inhibiting factors is the lack of adequate infrastructure for commerce. If we can actually reinvest in our country as a whole for modern infrastructure and to make sure that we're putting money into our education and training programs, that means that we can have the solid foundation for commerce to build on and the training and education to make sure that we have an adequate workforce to meet those jobs.
Okay. Although the budget picture has improved somewhat for both Medicare and Social Security, they're still on track to go bankrupt. How would you fix them?
To me, that is, I kind of reject that framework. The fact is, they are, one, that both have extended their solvency, or the Medicare's solvency has been extended since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act.
Yes, it has.
I would suggest that we raise or scrap the cap on Social Security entirely. Right now, the 900 wealthiest people in this country only pay Social Security tax for the first 2 days of the calendar year. If they were paying the same rate as everyone else, that makes Social Security solvent at least through 2050.
Okay. Finally, you've talked about some differences with Sean Duffy, your opponent on November 4. Any other PSs on those?
I would say that, one, I'm an advocate for women's rights. I think that women should be paid the same amount of money for doing the same work. That's something that Sean Duffy has voted against. I think that we ought to trust women to make their own family planning and health care decisions. Sean Duffy disagrees. I think that it's time for us to really look at ourselves as a country and understand that we are literally crumbling, from whether it's our roads, our bridges, our water infrastructure, our power grid. We have to invest in these things, and we have people out of work. Why not put them to work rebuilding our country so that we can stay competitive in a global sense?
Kelly, thanks very much. Kelly Westlund of Ashland is a Democratic candidate in the 7th Congressional District. Kelly, thanks for talking to Wisconsin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.